It's been 3 years since I began this journey into content creation. 3 years since I decided to dedicate my life to the discussion and celebration of the one constant that has always existed in my life. Over that period of time, I have had the opportunity to discuss many classic films with you all, and turn a few eyes to others that some people have never seen or heard of, which in itself has made all the stress, time crunches, long hours of editing, successes and hardships worth it. Before I started here on YouTube, I never thought my opinion was worth all that much to anyone, if I'm honest. I never expected this channel to go for as long as it has, partially because many of the projects that I have undertaken up until this point have kind of hit dead ends. It wasn't until a little over a year ago that everything changed for me, and that I realized that what I was doing mattered to people. Maybe not a lot of people, but that's not the point. The day that I reached my 100th upload, it hit me like a ton of bricks. I couldn't believe I had gotten that far, and that enough people were watching to warrant keeping the channel going. On top of all that, I was enjoying bringing every episode to you guys that I could, and wanted to do more and more, which is why we're here today. I am so proud to say that this video is ETF's 200th. And much like I did 100 episodes ago, by talking about the first horror film, I wanted to do something sort of special today. There is a film out there that houses imagery closely related to the stuff of nightmares, beginning in a deceptively sedate fashion with a series of woodcuts and engravings. The film then shifts into gear with a progression of dramatic vignettes, illustrating the awesome power of witchcraft in the Middle Ages. So powerful are some of these images that even some modern viewers will tend to avert their eyes from the screen. Referred to in English as just Witchcraft Through the Ages, or even more simply, The Witches, and taking shape as a hybrid of documentary and fiction, this silent film explores the history of witchcraft, demonology, and Satanism, stretching back into the earliest days of man. It shows representations of evil in a variety of ancient and medieval artworks, offers vignettes illustrating a number of superstitious practices, and presents a narrative about the persecution of a woman accused of witchcraft, building towards a climax that suggests that the modern science of psychology offers important insight into the beliefs and practices of the past. This is Haxan, Witchcraft Through the Ages. Quite possibly having the right to stake itself as the first ever documentary in some ways, the film was developed in 1922, having been written and directed by Benjamin Christensen, who based his work upon non-fiction pieces like the Malleus Maleficarum. Ultimately, the film cost somewhere between 1.5 and 2 million Swedish kroner, making it the most expensive Scandinavian film of the silent era, a fact which clashed hard given that its themes and visuals met with censorship everywhere that it was released, making it very difficult for them to make back the cost in any way, and ultimately led Christensen to be forced out of the Scandinavian film industry with a very tarnished reputation. The film itself plays much like a twisted fever dream that is being gradually recounted from the pages of history. With its morbid realism, we abscond into its imaginative horrors, as hysteria is mistaken for witchery and the innocent are condemned. Depictions of accusations and torture blend with the more surreal, hallucinatory visualizations of demonic entities as they dance and frolic in a frenzy of spellcraft, satanic baptism and orgies, and even infant sacrifice. The visual aesthetic of the piece, delivered in harsh experimental lighting styles and a deep grimy contrast of black and white, creates an atmosphere that lends a sort of unsettling feeling of filth to the production for viewers. Many sequences shift into a red or blue wash that possibly unintentionally invokes a cold or evil presence over moments where one may not even exist. Many of the more harshly real moments of torment and brutalization are simply depictions of the true life horrors that occurred as a result of the witchcraft outcry that occurred in places such as Salem, where religion and faith in a higher power took on a much darker and tyrannical presence in the lives of several communities. With many of the more obscure and morbidly horrific visual choices that the film chooses to show us, it's clear that the performers had a deep dedication to the material, and were willing to go the extra mile to create something that would not likely be forgotten by those who had witnessed it. While in some instances, performances may seem a little overacted by the standards of today, I feel that the theatrical style of the period helps to push the point of tragic suffering across in a much stronger and more memorable fashion. There's a darkness to this film that is contrasted by the more uplifting and whimsical eclectic jazz score by Daniel Homer. It creates an almost energetic storybook feel to what would otherwise be a horrific and somber series of truths and fantasies that move along at a very slow pace. Much of the design of the film is crudely macabre, with costumes of demons feeling like taxidermy amalgamations of twisted creatures that have no place outside of our darkest nightmares. It's a low-tech visual aesthetic that a few filmmakers today, like Rob Zombie, have dabbled in giving a new life to, and one that I personally appreciate quite a bit, as it helps in creating a more uncomfortable and slightly disturbing tone. I've never been entirely sure why this is, possibly because it creates an off-putting area where we know that it's cheap and fake, yet it still obscures us from the reality of what we are seeing in some fashion. The visual depictions of demons throughout this piece are almost archetypal in many ways, taking form of the horned and clawed monsters that many have feared since their early childhood. I will say that I don't expect this film to be for everyone. If you're a film or history buff, then there is plenty here that will both draw your eye and capture your imagination. However, you're a casual viewer whose diet consists mostly of more modern or postmodern horror will likely find something of this nature to be uneventful or boring. Personally, like Le Manieur du Diable, I find Haxan to be a visually stunning piece of cinematic history, whose visual depictions of macabre forces stand strongly today. There's a haunting, otherworldly threat created by this film, as it gives life to dark entities from stories that have existed throughout the history of man. Yet somehow, it remains a beautiful and carefully crafted piece of film's legacy. Hey friends, thank you so much for watching. I would personally like to thank all of you today who have been tuning in to ETF over the past few years, and to all of you who have been supporting the creation of our content. If you enjoyed today's video and you would like to see more like it, please consider supporting ETF on Patreon, where every donation goes towards making new content for you to enjoy. We have also set up our own merch store over at embracethefilm.com, where you can get your hands on a variety of ETF branded merch so that you can show your love of the channel wherever you go. But that's going to be all for now. Until next time, stay safe and keep embracing film.